Thanks for watching. So if you're an ADI looking to take your standards check soon, or indeed if you're a PDI and you've got your part 3 coming up, then this is the video for you. I've prepared some tips that I think might help you. So without further ado, let's just get cracking into it. So client-centered learning. I'm sure if you're an ADI already, you're very familiar with this term. You wouldn't have passed your part 3 if you didn't deliver a client-centered lesson. So it's still important though. So you need to deliver a lesson that matches your pupils' needs in that exact moment in time, because the examiner's watching the same lesson you're watching and the examiner's thinking, what does this pupil need? So they're looking at their faults and they're thinking, are you adapting and fixing those faults, basically. Client-centered learning, because now it's going to be value for money, because if you're addressing what they need, then that's a lesson worth paying for, because yeah, they've learned something. So you'll often hear examiners and other ADIs saying, look, just keep it simple. What does that mean? Just stick to what the pupil needs. Don't go in there with an elaborate plan and time it. I've often hear instructors saying, oh, we're going to do roundabouts, and they're telling me that 6 weeks before the test. I think, well, how do you know that pupil needs to do roundabout in 6 weeks' time? You know, so just keep it simple. Do what you'd normally do. Keep it as real as possible. Keep it like a normal lesson. Okay. Try not to overthink it too much. Warm up before your test. So pick up your pupil like you normally would and start your lesson like you normally would. Then you'll make your way over to the test centre and you'll pick up the examiner and continue the lesson as you normally would, just that you've got someone observing you at this moment in time. So don't think you've got to start the whole lesson again. Of course, make the examiner aware of what your pupil's needs are and what you're going to be doing, and then just get on with it. Because I've often, when I sit in the back watching, doing observations, is that instructors' best work often comes after 20-25 minutes when they've forgotten them there. So just try and get used to that. Maybe if you're preparing for this, get your trainer to come out with you, or just another ADI who can observe and give you some feedback, just to get used to it and your pupil used to having someone sat in the back. So you don't act weird on the day. Start the lesson with just one fault. So that's your need. You know, your pupil's just straight lined around about on the way in. So yeah, fine. You'd normally be dealing with that, so deal with it now. So just do with something that's just very relevant to the here and now, and go and fix it. That would keep things nice and simple and on point. Means you get moving sooner. Dynamic risk. I always like to have one kind of risk factor to talk about, just so I can demonstrate the competencies and give my pupil a little bit of responsibility for the start of the lesson. So it might be, if it's looking like rain, you could just ask your pupil to show you how they put on their lights and the wipers, and are they happy to be responsible for doing that if it rains today, or if there's a low sun. Often in winter we get the low sun. How are they going to deal with the low sun? Could they be responsible for that? Or the passenger. So you've just picked up a passenger. Have they had a passenger before? Could their responsibilities be? For checking seat belts, doors are shut, head restraints put in place. So don't pick all of these. Just pick one thing, just to demonstrate your competencies, but make it relevant. Just make it relevant to today. So if it's frosty, talk about that. Okay, get moving. 5 minutes of chit chat, no more. Get out onto the move and start your lesson, because that's where you're going to shine. The examiner needs to see what you like managing a moving car and teaching someone in a dynamic situation. So not just sat up giving briefings. You're never going to get many points if you just sat doing a briefing. And in fact, you don't want to do a briefing. The only time your visual aids will really be coming out is if you're helping a pupil understand something after a fault, just to help them picture what it is that they should have done, for example. So yeah, so get them out, adapt, see it, say it, sort it. I always go through a checklist in my mind to make sure I don't forget anything. So I've kind of like got this checklist ingrained in my head, and I'm thinking, right, have I done this? Have I done that? And I'd just like to share with you the checklist. So here it is. Let me just grab that and put that there. So yeah, so we're fixing faults. So the first thing is to identify the fault. You need to see it and say it. If you say it, then the examiner's aware that you've seen it. It's no good just seeing it and saying nothing and saying at the end, well, yeah, I knew they did that, because the examiners say, well, you need to say it. You need to show that you're aware of what your pupil just did. So to give it a mention, everything's worth a mention. Okay, so identify, see and say the fault. Next, you want to analyse it. So we need to help the pupil understand this. So find out what the root cause is. Why did they make that mistake? Is it a lack of understanding? It's a one-off? Could they not judge it properly? Do they not know the rules, for example? So get to the root cause of the problem. Then you need to talk about what's the danger. What would the danger be? So even if there wasn't danger on that time, if they straight lined the roundabout, for example, there might not have been anyone there, but always ask, what is the danger of them doing that? Okay, what's the risk? And as I said before, we just want to make sure that the pupil fully understands what it is that they did, what they should have done, what the risks are, and what they would do differently if they had the opportunity to do that. So now that moves us on to the remedy. So we need to fix this fault. So we need to think, right, do we need to change the plan? So talk to your pupil. Don't decide for them, oh right, we're going to do this again. Talk to them, would you like to do that again? Get agreement, and once you've got that agreement, then you just need to find out what level of help they need. If they've just told you what they're going to do differently, then suggest that they take more responsibility and have a go. But always offer or give options. So would you like me to do this? I can give you a bit of a talk through, get guide, let you do it on your own, for example. And I'm just going to pause it there, because next thing we need to talk about is the toolbox. Has the pupil got the tools to do that job on their own? So if you weren't there, could they do that themselves? So a big part of this client centered learning is we're encouraging and teaching our learners to solve their own problems, become critical thinkers, so that when they're on their own, when they pass a test and they've made a mistake or someone's just cut them up, that they think, well, hang on a minute, what caused that? What was my role in that? Could I have done anything differently? And what tools did my instructor give me to help me work this out and do this differently? So these long lasting, they're going to be able to look after themselves. You're trying to encourage them to take more independence and be more responsible for risk and their learning. So so the toolbox. So for example, let's say they've just cut a right corner, and if they don't know how to judge it, they didn't know when they should steer. So we might think, well, have you got a reference point for that? If they're driving too closely to the curb, have they got a reference point for that, for example? If they're following too closely, how are they judging a safe gap, etc.? If they get too close to a cyclist or a park car, well, how could they judge that? What tool, so like things like POM, your MSPSL, your larders, all these good stuff that we give our learners, these help them do things on their own. So always make sure you get the toolbox out and get your pupil to start thinking what they could have done differently and how they could do that. Then of course ask them if they'd like to practice and do that. But it's really important we get to the cause, because if we don't get to the cause, we could be barking up the wrong tree and get the wrong tool out, the toolbox, if you know what I mean. So let's just have a look about, often I get asked, do we need to pull up or do we keep moving? So the decision to do that, basically pull up if there's been a safety critical, so if you've had to physically intervene, or if your pupil's distressed or shaken up from an incident, then pull up, give them a break. Okay. If they don't understand something, so you're going to need to explain something, maybe get the visual aids out, then this is a good reason to pull up and explain something. if your pupil's overwhelmed by the situation, there's too much going on, they're like, they might need an easier practice area, for example. So yeah, so if they're overwhelmed, and indeed if you're overwhelmed, if you feel that there's so much going on that you're not coping, you know, you've got 5 plates spinning, you're like, oh my god, I don't know what to do, pull up, prioritise, agree which ones you're going to do. You can always come back to other ones later after you've dropped the examiner off. Remember, you've only got 45 minutes. It's not your fault. You're not Superman. You don't have to, or Superwoman. You don't have to sort all these problems out in 45 minutes. You just have to do your best job in the time you've got. So don't think everything is going to be tidied up in a nice little bow at the end of that lesson, because whenever it ever is it, just think your learner is on a 40-hour journey. They might be on their 20th hour, and the examiner's just seeing 45 minutes of that journey. So no, everything's not going to be squared away. There's going to always be ongoing problems, just like you've got ongoing development needs. So we never stop learning is the thing I'm trying to say. Keep moving if it's a one-off. If they understand, yeah, no, I get that, I understand what I did wrong, yeah, I'll do that differently next time, yeah, well, do you want to try it again? Yeah, no, yeah, great. If they're not overwhelmed, then again, you don't need to pull up. So that's that. Let's get rid of that one. Oh, down there. Back to the little slideshow. So now we've done that. So that's the checklist I'm going through in my mind to make sure all those plates are spinning and problems are getting solved, and I do that. And then finally we're going to get back to the centre and just sum up. So I always like to ask my pupil, what would they take away from the lesson today? What have they learned? So for example, I'll use the example of the corner cut. So, you know, jog their memory, you know, how are you going to do that differently next time? Oh yeah, I use my reference point, great. So they've got something to take away from that lesson, value for money. And that really concludes what I wanted to share with you today. So thanks for watching. If you like the video, please like, subscribe for more content, and please leave any comments about the video, what you want to see next, anything like that is always appreciated. So thanks a lot, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.